This is the Speak USA podcast. I'm Cliff Zinkgraf, your host. We are going to learn about our democracy, how to protect it, how to make it stronger, which Josh, you and I are both working on,
Yes,
aren't we?
we're trying.
We're trying. This is Josh Collins. Josh, welcome to the Speak USA podcast.
Thank you for having me, Cliff.
So glad you're here. And you are a civic storyteller.
Yes.
I love that. I'd like to think I'm a little bit of a civic storyteller, a little bit, but you are a civic storyteller. Why don't I'm going to just hand you the mic right now. Tell us more about what that means, and tell us what you're doing.
Sure. As a civic storyteller, which you're the second person in 2 days to tell me they love that term. I use it as an intersection for a lot of the things I'm really passionate about, whether that's film, local politics, community engagement. Those are really some of the three pillars that I try to find focus on whenever I tell my stories. A lot of that goes through my team's organization, Revision News, which we try to find hyper-local stories within the San Antonio area region, and we build high-quality, almost like short documentary news content based on that, because at least within there, we want things to remain entertaining, but also educational. And if there's a way where we can shorten the gap between constituents and voters and their local leaders, that maybe they don't understand at first some of the responsibilities or the duties that their local leaders provide to them, then that's something that we really try to address and make that gap as small as possible.
You know, I think it's your LinkedIn page,
Yes.
right? That says you are at the intersection of community, creativity,
Yes.
and public service.
Yes.
Did you come up with that? I mean, you're a storyteller.
Yeah, no, I wrote that. I needed a bio, so I thought about three things that were really important to me, whether it's my work with Revision, and then also some of the storytelling efforts with the CAST schools. But this one's more education-based and student-based, and with Revision, I can take some of that passion, some of that community engagement that might be stuck with education, but also apply it towards civic service as well.
Yeah, indeed. Let's not assume people know what CAST Schools is. Why don't you
Yes.
tell us?
So the CAST schools are a 501c nonprofit of model implementer schools. In the San Antonio region, there's 7 schools and 4 school districts, and a lot of them are more career themed, whether it's technology careers with CAST Tech, STEM careers with CAST STEM, med with CAST Med, the list goes on. And I work with them as their public relations coordinator. But part of the joys of that is it's also storytelling based and connecting local leaders with these students we love.
Yeah, indeed. And, without going into my day job too much, just by coincidence, I happen to be on the advisory board for a couple of the STEM, the CAST STEM, CAST, not CAST, of the CAST schools. And so that's something that you and I have in common.
Yes.
Something I've noticed is the way that those students, I see this in my own work where you first meet a student and work with that student. And, when they're young in 9th grade, maybe they haven't had a chance to stand in front of people too often. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that after a few weeks or a few months of making them do that, they start to get really good at it.
Yeah.
And man, the kids that we work with from CAST schools that are, in further grades, they're really good. Mm-hmm. They're very capable of putting a story together.
Absolutely.
Interestingly. So, who knew that we would be talking about it? By the way, you remember all that stuff we tried to fix with the video follow audio?
Yeah, is it jumping
I'm
back
just
and
going to
forth?
disclose to our audience, it's doing it again. It's going back and forth. So I'm going to manual mode here as we have this really cool conversation, so that doesn't become a distraction. Hey, everybody, when I'm looking down, I'm switching. I'm switching cameras. So anyway, another thing in your LinkedIn profile, storytelling to build trust. between people and their institutions. Elaborate on that.
Yeah, without getting too into the weeds of it, I feel, or at least what I've learned with the people that I work with through revision, is that regardless of your political party or your beliefs, there seems to have been a fundamental distrust between people and the organizations that were created to serve them. And so part of our work at revision is trying to reestablish that trust. And you might not be able to tell, on the surface level, because you're watching these very engaging, very impactful, very intimate stories, but that is our underlying mission. That is how we connect people to their local leaders and their local institutions.
One of the videos that is on the Revision News YouTube site is some people you interviewed on the street, kind of person on the street interviews, right? Who are talking about whether or not they watch the news. And some of their comments, one was, I get my news from Twitter.
It's
true.
It is true.
I have to say I wasn't terribly inspired to hear that. But on the other hand, I probably get more news from Facebook than maybe I should. The other thing I heard, well, there were two other quotes. One was no, not now, never, in terms of how often news, official news they're really consuming. And then the last comment was that all news is lies. That's like, oh my gosh.
Yes, but unfortunately, this is a truth that a
It's
lot of
reality.
people hold.
Yeah.
So, we found it that interesting for the sake of the video, but also as a challenge. What can we do? One video, one story, one question at a time, where we can try and at least change that narrative within the San Antonio area region.
Indeed. So you're a storyteller.
Yes.
So what's your favorite story?
I was thinking about this earlier, and I'll give you two answers. One that's very related to the work I do, and one that's not so much, but a story at large. And I think with the type of work I do, there is a very old documentary you can watch called Street Fight, where a cameraman followed Cory Booker for his when he ran for mayor of Newark, and it was very
And that's Senator Cory Booker
now senator, but at
Senator
the time,
from New Jersey,
yes,
right? Yeah.
But at the time, he was running to be mayor of Newark, New Jersey, and the journalist was able to follow him. It looked like a team of one, just one guy, and he was able to see that there were not just the struggles that Cory Booker, went up against, but also the underlying levels of corruption that he faced against his incumbent that he was campaigning against. And I find it to be an incredibly fascinating story. And if anybody ever has the opportunity, I think you can watch it on YouTube somewhere for free. It was nominated for Best Documentary at the Oscars that year. I think it's 2004, I believe. But again, that's just more centered.
Who put that story together? Do you know?
I don't remember the director off the top of my head, but I can share it afterwards. It's called Street Fight, and it's around 2004, 2003.
All right. Yes, do that.
Yes.
In the description,
Yes.
which I can say, because as of last night, the Speak USA podcast is on YouTube and on Apple Podcasts. Yes, that was a brief advertisement. I didn't plan that. I didn't even think about it. But, here
we are.
Here we are, yeah. So anyway, okay, was that it for your favorite stories, or did you have any?
I really like Street Fight, but I think one that's not related to the work I do that I'm very drawn to at almost an obsessive level is The Inferno by Dante. I came from a liberal arts charter school for my high school, and part of that education curriculum was that you picked a work in your senior year, and you would write a thesis on it and then defend that thesis against a panel jury of faculty. And I chose The Inferno, and I fell in love with the poetry, with how it was written, with what a lot of the parallels with real life events and just the larger narrative. And it's stayed with me since I've graduated about 7 or so years ago now, and has nothing to do with city level politics, but I find it to be one of my my favorite stories I come back to a lot.
Does it have to do with national level politics?
Well, sometimes I'll see things happening and I'm like, oh, yes, you'd go in this circle.
You know,
You'd
this
go
is
here.
this is where I remind everybody we're here to learn about our democracy and protect it and try to strengthen it. And I just have a feeling
Yeah.
I would answer that yes, but
Yes.
anyway, I'll keep moving. So as a way to talk a little bit more about Revision News, I want to talk about the thing that was my first exposure to your work.
Okay.
Before I met you, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn guy. So I'm on LinkedIn, and this video pops up in LinkedIn that is a farewell, a quote, a farewell to Ron,
Yes.
unquote. So Ron, that's Mayor Ron Nirenberg, somebody that you got to spend some time with in order to make this video. And I should disclose I'm a big time Mayor Ron fan. I got to work with him in my day job over his entire term, over 8 years. And so I watched it. Man, that was so cool. Tell us about the making of that video. Tell us what it is.
Sure.
Tell us about the making of it. Tell us anything you want to tell us about that.
So A Farewell to Ron was a project that was created in collaboration with the office of Mayor Ron Nirenberg. Now, we got in touch with his office through filming with a larger project, which we'll get into later, but we established a point of contact because we actually interviewed Ron for this project, kind of on the spot almost. But we remained in touch with his office, and I remember after the results of the 2024 presidential election, I was still going back and forth with some of his people, and we had a lunch towards the end of the year. And the idea was brought up that they understood that he was terming out in June of 2025, which is now, or a few months ago at the time. And they wanted to give him almost like a parting gift that would cover extensively what he had done.
And who is they?
His office.
His office.
Yes.
Okay, like the staff in his
Yes,
office.
the
so
staff,
forth.
his chief of staff, Zach, incredible. And he asked me if I knew a team of people that would be interested in doing that. And I was like, well, we could do that.
Me?
Yes. So we got back in touch. We got everything set up, and we spent a full day filming with Mayor Ron Nirenberg back in February of this year. And what our goal was to provide a retrospective of Mayor Ron's tenure, as we haven't had a mayor term out in decades.
In some time.
Yes. And given that he always had this calm, collected attitude, we felt that, because we were also fans of Ron and what the work he had done, we felt that some of the programs, maybe not a lot of people were familiar with them. So connecting to kind of our vision of, well, how do we educate people about this? How do we make this interesting? So that's what we set out to do. Initially, we tried to keep this project about 15 minutes, and we realized very quickly during the interview with Mayor Ron and his office that this was going to be a lot.
I'm so tempted to say, how'd you do?
I remember we published the video at about 5:30 in the morning of the day it was due, because we had stayed up all night. If you watch the video, all the animations, the slideshows, the footage, that was our team of 3 that had to put it together. But we also wanted to show this very human side of Ron, that he's more than just this mayor that let us out of COVID, etc. So unbeknownst to Ron thought that we were showing up for one day to film him, and then he'd give us a tour of council chambers and we'd leave, which we did, and I loved it. It was great. But I also went out of my way to reach out to Erica and Jonah to set up interviews with them as well.
And Eric and Jonah are
his wife and son, Erica Prosper Nirenberg and Jonah Nirenberg. And where we asked Ron nothing but policy questions, we asked Jonah and Erica the personal questions to build this character of Ron. Who else to hear it than from his family himself? And the result, especially the last 5 minutes of the documentary that we were able to put together, were some of our favorite parts of the edit. And we were able to see Ron's reaction because we surprised it with him as well. And he loved the video, which we had one person we were trying to please with that, and we did just that.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And yeah,
I mean, I gotta believe, Jonah in particular was spectacular.
He was great
in that video. I had a chance to meet him briefly on other fronts, not through my work with Mayor Ron, but through other things I was doing. Mm-hmm. To see how much he was just great. He was
incredibly well spoken.
Yes.
I try to tell people the questions we asked him, these were not rehearsed. We had to pull him out of class for a few minutes, and I was like, "You're not in trouble. We just need to borrow you for this project at large."
Jonah Nuremberg reports the principal's office.
But
I would love to have been there.
But even through all the extra footage that did not make the cut in Jonah and Erica's interviews, there is just an underlying love for Ron, and that's what we tried our best to use as much of that, and translate that into the documentary, which I believe we were able to. That video alone really gave us the launch pad to.
Well, for whatever it's worth, I wasn't watching it at 5:30 a.m. I was watching it at like 12:30 a.m. when I'm like, I really should be going to sleep, but I could not stop. When I saw it, I started it, and I was like, 30 minutes. Oh, well, too bad. I'm gonna watch this. It's really well done.
Thank you.
So that is just one thing you've done in Revision. You got some other things going on in Revision. Why don't you talk about them?
Sure. Actually, right now, we're working on a new series with a lot of our local leaders called Pulling Back the Curtain, where we sit down with council members, the city attorney, the city clerk, hopefully the city manager, and we have this almost interactive style of quick interviews, and then along with community footage of them in action, where we thought to ourselves, what better way for these local leaders to showcase what they do and how they serve their community than hearing it from themselves. So we started with Rick Galvan from District 6. We filmed with him. We filmed his interview last week, and tomorrow we'll be there for his
new councilman, recently elected. When it was August. So.
Recently elected, I believe our second youngest councilman ever. Probably just a little older than Ray Saldana from 2017, I believe. And we're going to be with him tomorrow as well for his community town hall budget meeting to really see him in action with his constituents. On top of that, we also spent time with some of the lesser known mayoral candidates. For those of you that weren't super familiar, we had 27 people run for mayor this year in San Antonio.
Okay, let me stop there because that requires some explanation
that
for anybody who doesn't know what's going on. So, as we noted, Mayor Ron termed out.
Yes. And
it turns out in San Antonio, this is actually under reconsideration now because of the way it turned out. It takes $100. You fill out a form, you pay $100, you're a mayoral candidate. Mm-hmm. So we had 27.
It was madness.
Yes.
On our end.
Yes. And of those 27, maybe 8 or 9
were serious.
Something like that. They were known, they were council people, or they were known for other reasons in the community that were serious. Yeah. Yes. So anyway, back to you. So
in part of all that, knowing that there was just an excess of names on the ballot, we sat down with a handful of not the top contenders at the time, but candidates that we felt were very serious in their fundraising efforts and their vision for the city, but just giving them an extra platform. And we called that the race for the mayor's seat. And we only did about 4 episodes of that before other responsibilities took over. I think that's everything with revision.
Are you
right
going
now.
anywhere with that collection at all?
Right now, it sits on our revision page. We do plan on returning to it, especially for if upcoming midterm elections as well. We think a lot of people received the series really well, where we asked the same questions, and you'll see the variety not in how we asked them, but in the responses we got. To us, that's the appeal.
Well, and I also watched the video of the differing answers, the compare and
Yes,
contrast
with
between
Marina.
now a councilwoman,
Mhm.
Marina Alderete Gavino. Did I say
Gavito, yes.
Gavito? Oh my gosh, I know her. Sorry.
No worries.
And so Marina Alderete Gavito, and oh, now see,
He's slipping me.
I just did myself in. Dan Rossiter.
Yes.
Dan Rossiter. And I hope I got that right.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure that I did. It was fascinating, right? I mean, you literally had, going right back and forth between, they were both really good, I thought.
Thank you.
In that video as well. So yeah, that's fascinating. And I love the work that you are doing to help citizens of San Antonio
Mhm.
understand how their city works. And I hope people who are listening to this who are not in San Antonio will ask the question, do you have a similar
Yes.
thing in the place that you live? Maybe you like Josh. Maybe you can be the one to go do it. Something like that. So, the work you all are doing, revision, is so important. We value at Speak USA, we value our history, rights, progress, and institutions. We value the fact that we have a free press, and that is fundamental to a democracy,
Mhm.
and it is under threat.
It is under attack right now. We are seeing censorship that I have not seen in my lifetime, and as someone that values a free press, a press that can ask all kinds of questions, that worries me because it begs the question: if I'm seeing this on the federal level, what will this look like if it were to trickle down? What will that look like if I'm not able to choose the stories that I want to pursue or ask the questions that I want to ask? So I find it deeply concerning seeing what's been happening at the White House, because I know that if these practices are to become normal, then it absolutely will find a way down to Texas.
I mean, in my opinion, what's happening in the White House, as you put it, is a betrayal of the oath of office.
Mm-hmm.
It is, that person stood up and swore, and I don't think meant it, to defend the laws, defend the Constitution of the United States, and has the responsibility to enforce the laws,
Mm-hmm.
and turns right around and breaks the laws.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's nothing.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it has an immediate impact on so many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people.
So let's define the term chilling effect for
Mhm.
people. When somebody of that position, I was going to say stature,
Mhm.
but I don't believe that. Somebody in that position stands up and says the things that are said. It causes people to dive under the table, and then the stories don't get told.
Mhm. Because they're terrified of what were to happen if they were to publish the stories. We talked a lot about this censorship that's coming down. And the result is that now you have media outlets and journalists that are being forced to bend their knee. Because if you don't, they're going to hit you with $100 million lawsuits. And they will, in one way or another, force you not just to not pursue the story that you believe is objective, or that you believe that constituents or voters and citizens need to hear, but actually pursue stories that might even betray that idea and might not even be relevant to the larger story that you're trying to pursue in general. I find that deeply concerning.
Yeah, it's troubling. And then we could go back through history and highlight the examples where it was only because of a free press that we found out things that we needed to know. Nixon, Watergate.
Oh, the Washington Post for Watergate. Absolutely.
I mean, yeah. Now, where's the Washington Post now?
Exactly.
Where, where did they go? And it is absolutely, downstream from what's going on. How sad! That is so sad.
It's incredibly sad because I understand, or I'm self-aware enough to know that a tiny team like Revision, if we're able to see what's happening to these $100 million organizations of media, of press, of journalists, then it will absolutely have an impact on the hyper-local stories as well, whether that's the incredibly niche stories that come from Revision or even the ones that are larger like TPR. I'm seeing these institutions under attack, and it's easy to feel powerless or even helpless because there's almost nothing we can do. We're not pursuing these lawsuits. We can't fight these lawsuits. So what other choice do people have than to submit? And
Indeed.
It's unruly.
Maybe I'll say this, it'll be permission for someone to go down the path I've gone down. There was a time 20 years ago when I would have heard ACLU and I would have thought, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And man, have I changed my mind about that.
Yeah.
In such a fundamental way. Thank goodness the ACLU is there. Now when I hear them defending something that, they still defend things that, you wouldn't,
raise your eyebrows.
You personally wouldn't be caught dead doing yourself, right? But I think twice now about how I feel about that. And then I see them defending other things. I'm like, thank goodness they're there. Because what would we do without an organization of that is so long tenured, that has the experience they have, that has the commitment they have to defend the Constitution no matter what.
Regardless of political party, it's an oath. And
right.
To see them uphold the oath, whether I agree with it or not, you said it earlier. It's almost like we took it for granted, and now it's almost a relief.
Well, Josh, I would tell you we take so many things for granted in this country. Oh my gosh. Just, the wealth that we have here. We just can't relate. That by and large, there are people who are doing better, people who are doing worse. There's serious economic disparities, and so I don't want to make light of that. But overall, as a nation, we are so rich. And we just have no concept of what that's like because we've never lived on the other side of it. And so, amid being unhappy and disgusted by what's going on, and reminding myself that we need to talk about the way we would want to see it. We can't just be mad about something. We got to talk about what ought to be different. So one thing that ought to be different is our leaders should stop saying things that are intentionally dividing us, and they should start taking their oath seriously. That's what I want to see. I want to see people elected who will do that, take it seriously, and then we can have the policy debates. There's pros and cons, different policies. We can have those debates. Did I just lose my train? I think I just lost my train of thought live on the
But I agree.
Well, we're not live, but I lost my train of thought on the podcast. Yeah, rescue me, please.
I was going to say, I think we fundamentally need a change in rhetoric. I'm so sorry. Am I being called? Sorry. I was like, I silenced my
awesome.
phone.
That was your phone.
Yeah,
we're constantly connected. We live in a connected world.
Absolutely.
Okay. Back to you.
But I was saying that we have seen such a sharp divide in our rhetoric, specifically in the last 10 years, that it has become the ugly normal, as I call it, and this needs to change. I thought it looked like we made progress 4 or 5 years ago, but specifically with some of the documentary work I've been doing, we saw that actually wasn't the case. That in fact that this ugliness, this division, simply was placid for 4 years, and it waited until the most recent election to turn its ugly side of the head, and we saw that on full display with 6K cameras and the best microphones money could buy, and at least for the projects that we were working on, we were able to see our scope explode. We try to focus on hyper-local, San Antonio-based stories, but we'll get into this with our larger project, that I keep hinting at, but our scope very quickly went from a San Antonio story to a national story. And I feel like that is no coincidence, because of the type of dialogue and division that we've been seeing specifically in the last 7 or 8 months.
Saqib Sheikh, who I interviewed last week, he ran for District 8 Council. He talked about this as well. He estimates he did 7,000 door knocks during his campaign. Wow. So number one, that's just amazing. Can you imagine just how many door knocks? So he told a couple of stories, one more positive, one more negative. The one that he told that was more of a negative story is after a really nice conversation with a resident, that person looked at him and said, "Now, by the way, tell me, are you going to bring Sharia law to the United States?" Just where did that person, I don't want to completely undercut the feeling that person had when they were talking. I think he puts it in a very mature way. They're fearful. Why are they fearful? Because they've been consuming these things that they're hearing that are just ridiculous and are never going to happen. Josh, do you got any ideas how we're going to fix this? Because let me give you set that up just a little bit better. Yeah. So what do we do when we're under attack like that? Do we turn the other cheek?
No, absolutely.
It doesn't work. Right? We can be civil, but I don't think we can turn the other cheek. So then do we partake in the same behavior? And doing that, or are we just making it worse? So having set that up, what do you think?
Yeah, I say no to that. You asked earlier, how do we remove ourselves from this? Well, my simple answer is one story at a time. In the example that you provided, yes, the unpleasant conversation, the potential voter was fearful. But what I also see is that the potential voter is ignorant of how specifically San Antonio City Council works and how that does not have an effect on his life the way that Sharia law would. So the revision news in me goes, okay, I see a problem where someone is fearful, and that's genuine, that comes off in their question. But rather than immediately demonize and cast them to the side, which happens, because if that were to happen, all you do is give them benefit of the doubt, and in their position, they feel, oh, well, because I got rejected or I'm being ostracized, it must be because of what I'm saying has some truth to it, which is not necessarily the case at all. But if we could explain and educate in a way that's entertaining to keep their attention, and they can learn that this is not the case, and in fact, this is how your city councilman or projected city councilman is supposed to help you, then they won't feel the necessity to ask a question like that, regardless of the person in front of the door or what they might already be fearful for. That's not a question you ask somebody running for city council. That's not a question you should ask anybody without knowing beforehand. There's a long list of fundamental misunderstandings in that. But with that being said, at least on my end, we exist to educate and to entertain. And based off of that example, I see someone that needs to be educated, not in a demonizing way, but in a way so that they can understand that this kind of question is not only not okay to ask someone, but that it doesn't apply, and it will not have the effect that they think it does, specifically for someone running for city council in District 8 of San Antonio.
Yeah, indeed. And to Saqib's credit, he painted a very sharp line between the person that he would be talking to when he's knocking on a door and shares this kind of question with him, who's been consuming the wrong stuff. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, the people who are broadcasting that stuff that triggered that question in the first place. And he had a lot of compassion, I think, is the right way to put it, for the person who asked him that question, who, lives in, some neighborhood in District 8 and, is fearful. He didn't have a lot of forgiveness for, those who are broadcasting those kind of things. And I'm going to add very quickly, I think that's got to apply to both sides too.
Absolutely.
There are some channels that I may not disagree with what underlying is what they're saying, but I don't like the way they're saying it. And I don't watch those either. I try not to watch either side of that. And boy, I can just hear people right now saying, "Yeah, well, what are you watching?" just waiting to argue with my self-assessment. Hey, that actually brings up something that I wanted to ask you about. Are you familiar with these? I don't know what the right term is. There's two sites in particular that rate news sources. One is called Adfonts or Adfontus. I'm not sure I'm saying it right. So what they do is a graph, and the y-axis on the graph is the extent to which that news source is fact-based. And then the x-axis, or left-right, is liberal versus conservative, right? Left versus right. And so I pay a lot of attention to those. I try to keep my news sources to those that are, not too far off the middle. I mean, in my case, they're a little more left than they are right. But, they're pretty much in the middle and definitely above the fact line. And then there are those that are not above.
Those that fall below.
Fact line, I'm not paying too much attention to that. How do you balance? Here's a good question that's related to that. How do you balance the education and the entertainment side of this? How do you do that?
You do that through the humanity of each story. Specifically when we interview someone, whether it's the former mayor of San Antonio to someone that may be experiencing houselessness. Both of these people have specific stories. And our job, at least with Revision, is how do we elevate these stories and how do we ask the right questions that aren't going to divide an audience, but rather provide content that is educational in regards to these circumstances by showcasing the humanity of the former mayor to your everyday person on the street. You're really just going to notice that, at least what we hope to do, is that we're not so different with everybody else around us. And the more that we can connect that with our message and bridge this gap of understanding between constituents and local leaders, this is what I was saying earlier. It's one story at a time. And I personally believe that it's the humanity of all this that allows us to tell these stories in a way that's not to divide, but to bring together. Regardless of political spectrum, there is a level of empathy, care, and attention to detail that we put into our stories where, because we don't need to provide daily news, because we don't have, unbeknownst to us or out of our hands, we're very stretched thin. The stories that we do pursue, we do 110% because it needs to be factually correct, but it also needs to be educational and entertaining. Underlying that, though, where's the humanity in this story? Are we asking the right questions? Obviously we can get a conversation started with surface level questions and getting to know somebody, but I'll allot an hour and a half, 2 hours to these interviews because it's not just going to be, how are you today? Tell me a little bit about yourself. And I think it's that humanity that we provide that we're not seeing in other levels. And I don't mean that just in hyperlocal news. So if that's an avenue that we can pursue, and if those are stories that we can tell, then by all means, we will do that every single time.
So a lack of humanity in the news that is being reported. And what an incredible thought, right? That we need to build that humanity. It makes me think that even the sort of the routine daily national news, the routine local news, like every story they tell ought to have some level of humanity in it.
It's so easy to see a person as a statistic because it's harder to see the humanity behind it. Because when you see the humanity behind it, you're forced to be empathetic. This is someone's brother. This is someone's son. This is someone's daughter. It's not just a number on a graph. And if we can do that with our stories, with our San Antonio community, then we know we're doing a good job.
And to translate that to the world we live in, Sakib and I, again, the interview from last week, we talked about Israel and Palestine and Ukraine, and how many people from different perspectives are, hear one side of that story and connect with the humanity, and hear the other side of that story and connect with the statistics.
Mm-hmm. And it's my when I am told that, and because I see that when I see this rejection of humanity, it's because it's easier. It is a lot harder to see other people as people with lives, with stories, with circumstances that led them to these events, simply because it's more difficult and it's easy to become lazy. And that goes for both sides of everything that I've seen.
We could get into a very deep discussion about free will.
Oh, my goodness. No. Yeah, I could see us getting very philosophical.
Right, yeah, this could go really philosophical in a hurry. So maybe we won't.
Off camera.
We'll do that. Okay, yeah, boy, okay. We got something we need to talk about when we're all done. When we're all done here. So let me change the topic. We talked about your mayoral documentary a little bit already. If you've got anything to add, you could certainly do that. You also had mentioned a story that I mistook for our local TV station.
Oh yes.
Right. It's I guess a YouTube channel called Channel 5.
Channel 5
is
with
that right?
Andrew Callahan.
Yeah. So just before you take over, those who are similar age to me will hear Channel 5 and you immediately think of a certain local TV station, which is what I did. We spent like 2 minutes talking about it before you straightened me out. But why don't you tell us that? It meant a lot to you, and it was kind of a reverse version.
Yeah. Channel 5 with Andrew Callahan is an independent journalism and news team, not beholden to any like larger organization like an MSNBC, etc. And almost like the early days of Vice, where it was very boots on the ground kind of guerrilla storytelling. Andrew from Channel 5 takes this a step further, and we are able to see these very human stories. I mean, Cliff, I'll advise you to go watch some of the interviews for himself, where he goes to drug-ridden cities to speak to these people that he sees on the streets. He goes across the border to cross the border with families that are risking their lives and risking their livelihoods for a better opportunity. In the process, he's willing to get detained with his camera team to tell these stories. And I think, because there is a certain level
and he got detained going the other direction.
Crossing from Mexico to the United States.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I did not understand that before. Okay.
He went forwards and then he crossed back, and which he was detained by Texas Border Patrol.
He was detained when he came back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay.
But there is a level of independence that comes with his storytelling that I find deeply admirable. But also underlying all of this, with all of his stories and with how he asks his questions, this goes back to what I was saying earlier, there is a level of humanity. And maybe that's why I find myself so drawn to his stories, even though our scope is probably way more narrow. I still tune in every time I see that they have something new to talk about. And I find it incredibly fascinating.
And so if somebody's listening wants to find that, where do they find it?
Sure. You can go on YouTube and type in Channel 5 or Andrew Callahan. It'll be one of the first to come up. They have millions of subscribers now.
All right.
Great.
Understood. And that sounds like something I need to go watch as well.
They're great.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So kind of starting to move toward the end of our conversation here. We're in a mission in Speak USA, we're based where you're based, but we're not necessarily focused on local politics. What we're focused on is trying to help people who are seeing what's happening and want to act to know how to do that, to really understand the things that they can do to act. And we're coming at it from complementary perspectives. I think you've used the word hyperlocal
Yes.
more than once, which definitely describes what you're doing. So my question for you is, to our folks who are listening, who are trying to figure out what can I do, how would you advise them?
I think in terms of a lot of the avenues that I spend my time with or pursuing, when someone asks me, how do I get involved? My almost gut answer is locally. I argue that your local government has almost the most immediate impact on your life compared to the state and federal. Not that they don't, but in terms of your everyday decisions. In San Antonio, the barrier to entry, especially with your city councilmen and your local leaders, is non-existent. Simply showing up to speak at your city council A sessions. It's free. It takes 3 minutes. It's every Thursday at 9.
So there's 2 sessions every week. There's an A session and a B session.
Yes.
The A session is open for citizen comment.
Yes.
Right? You just go, you sign up.
And
So-
you can get involved.
Yeah, do it.
Your council people are also incredibly accessible. Their field offices are public information. They want feedback from constituents and ways to make your life better. That is what they were elected to do. And if I understand San Antonio, we run nonpartisan, and I think that works specifically in a city like San Antonio because issues that are nonpartisan require nonpartisan support. And regardless of what side you vote on, you can get involved knowing that there's not going to be a bias when you reach out to your local leader and your local organizations, especially at City Hall.
Indeed. What an opportunity. So I'm curious, so when you decided to get into journalism, or maybe you pick a different example, this will kind of be the wrap up of this part. So for a lot of people, there's an emotional barrier to getting involved or a fear barrier. I've said this in prior episodes. I had not been to a protest before until about 6 months ago. And I got bad enough and had enough, right? But it wasn't like the first time I went. It's like, what's this going to be about, right? Is this really something that I want to do? Have you ever had to cross a barrier like that?
Yeah, I think especially in a lot of the work we do, regardless of any reservation we may have, we have to cross that barrier. We filmed a lot of the protests recently as part of our larger project with our mayoral race documentary, because we felt that this was incredibly important, not just to portray, but to capture this specific moment in May of 2025, in March of 2025. People are upset. And if we were to ignore that or try and dance around that and film everything but that, we would be doing a disservice not just to the people that aren't involved in San Antonio that are tuning in, but to ourselves, because that would be hypocritical of the kind of message that we want to tell. It's incredibly important to show that.
Yeah, indeed. So I want to make sure people know how to find you and Revision News. So
Alrighty.
Tell everybody, how do they do it?
Yes, if you go to revision.news, you'll be able to find our page online. And there are our library of videos. We're still adding more as the months go on. And I believe the same is for our Instagram page and YouTube as well, Revision News, or I can tell you right now if I...
Yeah, go for it. So, and while you're doing that, why, tell us about, just so people know,
Sure.
our local universities are so important to what we're doing. You're a UTSA grad,
Yes.
you're a St. Mary's grad.
Yes.
What are the programs there that got you where you are?
Yes. So people get surprised when I tell them I was never a journalism major. I was never a film and media major. My degrees are actually in PR and comms from UTSA and my MBA from St. Mary's. I got involved because I cared about storytelling and specifically filmmaking. Specifically with UTSA, they have a free entertainment and film club. I met a lot of my like lifelong partners and business partners and friends just by showing up and swallowing that pill of fear.
See, well, now that was my question from before.
Yes.
There it is. Okay, swallow your fear.
You have to.
Maybe that might wind up being the title of today's episode.
Yeah, it's
Probably not. We had bigger things, but I love it.
Once you realize that nobody's gonna care or look at you differently if you show up, and you get out of your own way, you'll see the doors open for you, and you'll make connections that will last outside of universities.
You know, I might say that a little differently because people might. Some people might look at you differently, but the reward far outweighs
Far greater.
the little bit that you might have to deal with. So here's what I want to close on. I wanted to do this earlier and I forgot, but I think this is a great way to wrap up our conversation. Let me put the camera. I'm going to put the camera on me here so that I can make sure you all see this. Okay. This is a picture. I actually pulled this off of out of a Revision News episode. It's the first one you all did. Let me see if that's. Oh, I'm in the wrong. Actually, here I'm going to go to this camera right here. So if you all look at that, and you can find this on the Revision News site. This is the first published newspaper. Ever. My goodness.
Look at how far we've come.
It's called. Its name was Relation. That was the name of the publication was Relation. And you think about how the printing press changed the world. You think about the importance of a free press to a democracy. And I am reminded, another quote I use a lot on this show, I'm reminded of Heather Cox Richardson, who's on Substack, if you want to go read her. I just love what she said. She said, demand that your government work the way it's supposed to. And I demand that you go do your job. What are you doing here? Go get out of here. Get out of here and go get us some great stories.
Because if people don't demand it, we will show it.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. So, Josh, thank you.
Thank you for having me, Cliff.
So much for being here. What an incredible conversation. We're so fortunate to have journalists who are committed to the work they're doing. Thank you for being one of those.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. What did you learn about your democracy today? Remember, you can learn more by going to speakusa.org. As of yesterday, you can find all of our podcasts. You can just go to the top of the homepage. There's a link, and you'll find us on Apple Podcasts. You'll find us on YouTube. And we want to help you learn. We want to help you connect, know who to give to, and how to get engaged in the things that are going on in our country right now. Thank you so much for watching the Speak USA podcast. And remember to speak for the USA. Thanks, Josh.
Of course. Thank you, Cliff.